get it in writing. Whether it's an internet stranger or a friend you've known for decades, if you're making music together and talking about making money together, then it's best to have everybody's expectations spelled out in a contract. We're going to look at two specific contracts, a co-writer's agreement as well as a work-for-hire agreement, and we're also going to unpack a rock cue collaboration I did with my good guitar friend Donnie Wayne Smith on my week 36 vlog check-in. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Kropf. Welcome to my 52 Cues check-in for week 36, where I am committing to writing at least one cue per week for the entire year and vlogging about it, talking about the cue, talking about things going on in the industry, in my life, or whatever. If this is your first time here, welcome. I'm so glad that you found me. Why don't you consider giving the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel? It really will help composers just like you find me. I also want to give a special word of thanks to my Patreon patrons whose support helped make this channel possible. We're going to have more about my Patreon at the end of the video. If you want to skip over the vlog portion and get right onto the cue breakdown, we're going to be looking at Sturm Und Drang, this rock cue I did with my good friend Donnie Wayne Smith. Then you can check out the timestamps in the description below. So that is what we are, that's the cue we're going to be looking at today. But a recent question came up on an old video that I had made on a rock positive cue, or a positive rock cue, asking about contracts. And I've recently talked about contracts on my video about ways that you can pay for work for hire. But I thought it would be a really good idea to kind of go by line through these contracts and talk about the things that we need to keep in mind as composers and as we're bringing other people on board with us. And like I said at the beginning, if you're talking about making music together and making money together, you're ultimately going into business with someone. And so have everything spelled out in the contract. To have that, it's really, really important. It just manages expectations, and there's no real gray area. Now, before I pull these contracts up, I need to say first that I am not a lawyer. I'm just showing you these for demonstration purposes. It is strongly encouraged that you do seek your own legal counsel when getting into any contract. But I'm just showing you the contracts that I use, and I've had some good success with them. But me, 52 Cues, we're not going to be held liable. This is just my disclaimer here. Not liable for your using these contracts. So the first contract that I want to pull up is my work for hire agreement. Again, here's my disclaimer, right? This is a courtesy and a demonstration purposes. This is not intended as legal advice, okay? So just big disclaimer. I might even put a disclaimer at the beginning of this video. All right, so the work for hire agreement. This is done when you want to bring somebody on board and you don't specifically want to cut them into your royalty share. They're not entitled to any additional payment beyond their services. And we talked about ways to pay for that in that previous video. We'll have a link to that. We'll have a card to that so that you can check it out. You can pay by barter, you can pay by royalty splits, or you can pay actual cash. So let's just kind of break this down line by line, and if you have any questions, please, you can let me know in the comments below. So work for hire agreement, entered the date, your legal name, and then we're referred to as the producer. Even if you're the composer, it's the producer, and then the musician's legal name, hereinafter referred to as musician. And so Article number 1, section 1 rather. Producer hereby engages musicians' services, and musician hereby accepts such engagement to perform without limitation recording sessions for the purpose of creating the following master and or demonstration recordings entitled, and then you would list the titles of the project, the tracks, or the cue. Now, even if they're providing MIDI services and not actual recordings, you don't have to necessarily word that. And then the musician agrees to diligently, competently, and to the best of musician's ability, experience, and talent perform to producer's satisfaction all of the service required of musician hereunder rather. And so that just basically says that they're going to do their best. Section 2, conditioned upon musician's full and faithful performance of all the terms and provisions hereof, producer shall pay musician, and this is where you outline the payment amount, the description of the services that you're trading, or the royalty percentage. Now, I've even had some success with this where I just say services in trade to be fulfilled at a future date, right? As long as you indicate that, then you're good to go, because now you are essentially legally binding to trade in the future. And be as specific as possible with this. If it's money, just the money, $50, $100, or whatever. The royalty split, the percentage that they would get as writers. So outline that, be as detailed as possible. So payment shall be made upon full performance by musician in the signing of this agreement. No other consideration or payment shall be due to musician other than the amount specified in this paragraph. This says that once this payment is rendered, whether it's barter, whether it's royalties percentages, or whether it's payment, actual cash, then there's no other money happening. All right. Number 3, one of the most important aspects here. Musician agrees that his or her performances shall be considered as works made for hire for producer, as contemplated and defined in Section 101 of the U.S. Copyright Act. Accordingly, musician hereby grants to producer, its successors, and assigns absolutely and forever all rights in every kind of every kind and nature in and to the results and proceeds of musician services and performances for any and all copyright terms and all extension and renewable terms of copyright, whether now known or hereafter created throughout the world. And for all purposes and purposes for all uses and purposes whatsoever, and free from the payment of any royalty or compensation whatsoever, other than as herein provided, producer shall accordingly have the sole and exclusive right to copyright the sound recording under producer's name as the sole artist and author thereof. Wow, that is a mouthful. This basically says you will not, or the musician is not due any royalties, and is not even due a writer's credit, because I could just say, this is mine. So when I have Donnie on a track that I have hired him as a work for hire, I am not legally obligated to say Donnie appears on this. It is mine. Now, this is different from a co-writer, and we'll get to co-writer here in a minute. Section 4, musician hereby warrants, represents, and agrees that musician is not under any disability, restriction, or prohibition, whether contractual or otherwise, with respect to musician's right to execute this contract, to grant the rights granted hereunder, to perform each and every term and provision required to be performed by musician hereunder. No materials, ideas, or other properties furnished by musician and utilized by producer will violate or infringe upon any common law or statutory right of any person, firm, corporation, including without limitation contractual rights, copyrights, and rights of privacy and or publicity. Musician shall hold producer harmless and hereby agrees to indemnify producer for all costs, including court costs and attorney fees incurred by producer in connection with any breach of the above warranties and representations by musician. Again, another mouthful, pretty legalese rather. But it basically says that the musician can and is legally able, and represents that they are legally able to perform on your track, and they are not using any uncopyrighted or any copyrighted material. And this is indemnifying you, the producer, legally, that if a musician brings, and let's say that you're having them rap on your track, or let's say that they are playing a lick or something, and they actually are using somebody else's, it's not them, or they're playing copyrighted material, that you, as the producer, are not legally obligated, or you're not legally liable for that, and that any court costs or whatever will be there. So if you get sued, then you can put the cost of that lawsuit onto the musician. Number 5, musician acknowledges and agrees that nothing in this agreement shall obligate producer to employ or otherwise engage musician services in connection with any other recording agreement. This says essentially that once this is done, you guys can part ways and you're good. The producer doesn't owe any additional work to the musician. Number 6, musician acknowledges and agrees that if he or she provides musical equipment or other property of any nature in connection with services required hereunder, producer shall not be liable for any loss or damage to such equipment or property. This is really important if people are bringing gear to your studio and something happens, like the studio is up above a garage, there's stairs, and if a guitarist comes in and drops their guitar down my stairs or something, that I am not liable. And of course, this gets into homeowners insurance and all that kind of stuff, but this will protect you. Section 7. This agreement sets forth the entire understanding of the parties hereto relating to the subject matter hereof and supersedes all prior and contemporaneous negotiation, understandings, and discussions. No modification, amendment, waiver, termination, or discharge of this agreement or any of its terms or provisions shall be binding upon either party if not confirmed by a written instrument signed by producer and musician. This says that this document is the final word on whatever you've been negotiating up to this point, with the understanding that in Section 3 or Section 2, you didn't say to be determined later, and then you would include some language about how that's getting determined, like for payment services. But that this says that this document is the final word. And then finally, Section 8, the validity, construction, and effect of this agreement shall be construed according to the laws of the municipality. So for me, it'd be the state of Florida. A court of competent jurisdiction of Orange County, I'll need to actually update that, will have exclusive jurisdiction of any controversies regarding this agreement, and the parties hereto consent to such jurisdiction. In the event of any legal dispute or action regarding this agreement, the prevailing party shall be entitled to recover all legal fees and court costs. That basically says that I'm in Florida, and we're using Florida law to arbitrate any court issues or to handle any court issues. So if they're in California and you're in Florida, or you're in Delaware, or if you're in the UK and they're in Australia, you have to determine which laws are going to govern this contract. So for me, it would be the municipality of the state of Florida. This is why it still says Orange County. And then you have the producer sign it, which would be you, and date it. The musician sign it and date it. And then you would print your name, and as would the musician. Now, you can use like DocuSign or something like that, or you can print this out, or you can sign PDFs, or however you want to handle this. And this is the work for hire agreement that I've used several times, whether it's bringing a bass player in, whether it's trading out, or whether it's royalty percentages. Now, speaking of royalty percentage, once you are really looking at a co-writer where you're giving 50% royalties, then at that point, now we are in co-writing territory. Now, once again, I'm not a lawyer. This is for demonstration and courtesy purposes only. But here is the co-writing agreement that I use. All right, the agreement is entered upon the date, and then your full legal name, your full address, your phone number, email, whatever other contact information you want to put on. So this is my co-writing agreement. And then the name of the co-writer, full legal name, address, phone, and email. Hereinafter, co-composers, with respect to the composition listed in Schedule A, which I'll talk about here in a minute, hereinafter the songs and the broadcast quality recordings of said the songs, hereinafter the masters. So we're dealing with songs, which is the copyright intellectual property, and the recordings, which are the masters. First of all, the songs. The parties agree that A, all composers contributed to the songs. So everybody had a hand in writing. B, all co-composers shall jointly own the songs throughout the universe and in perpetuity, subject to paragraph 3b. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. Any registration of the songs or the masters with copyright authorities or performing rights organizations shall reflect this. This says that the co-composers will always be listed as co-composers with any copyright or PROs. C, any and all revenue generated by the exploitation of the songs shall be split as followed. And here you would have your writer's name, so which could differ from your legal name, right? So if you have an artist name or if there's the name of the band or whatever, you would have your writer's name as it is registered with your performing rights organization. So you'd have your writer's name, your PRO, your IPI number, which is the number, the PRO number that the PRO gives you, and then the royalty percentage. And this would be the writer's share. So 50-50. I almost always do my co-writing agreements 50-50. I've just found it's just easier to leave it a 50-50 split. And then you would have your co-writer's writer name, PRO, IPI number, and royalty percentage. You do not need to be members of the same PRO. You don't have to be. It makes publishers' lives a lot easier, but you don't have to be. All right, number 2, the masters. The co-composers agree that, so we're talking about the recordings here, or the actual like WAV files or whatever. The masters. The co-composers agree that A, they shall share the cost of copyrighting the work. So if there is a legal, if you are publishing your own tracks, then you would share and split the copywriting process, the cost. They will share the cost of producing a broadcast quality recording of the work should such costs be necessary, but that all such costs shall be reasonable and be approved in advance by both parties. So if you get your tracks mastered somewhere else or studio time or whatever, you are agreeing that the recording shall be split. C, they will obtain a release from any other third party whose performance shall be embodied in the masters and provide a copy of any such to the other co-composer. So if your co-composer brings in a work for hire, then they are obligated to take care of that. They will pay for it or whatever on their own, and they have to prove to you and give you documentation that other party is a work for hire. So what they can't do is cut somebody else necessarily, I guess, without your permission and consent. They can't cut somebody else into the royalty split because that would have to be defined here. They shall jointly own the masters throughout the universe and in perpetuity, subject to paragraph 3b below, which we'll talk about. Any and all revenue generated by the exploitation of the masters shall be split as follows. Your publisher name, that's you, your co-writer, your PRO, IPI number, and publishing royalty percentage, your co-writer's publisher name, PRO, IPI, and royalty. Now, what that means is that you should own your own or have your own publishing or publisher set up with your PRO. And PROs are really, they're agreeable to this. They'll help you set up a publisher, no problem, whether it's ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, or your own PRO in your country. They will easily set up a publisher name for you. Even if you don't ever do anything with it, you should probably look at setting up your own publisher just in case. Now, if you're dealing with a co-writer that doesn't yet have a publisher, which I have done, then I would say I would indicate a co-writer publisher to be determined at a later date, and then assign that percentage. That's what's so important is outlining the percentage here. Now, 3B will supersede this when you start getting another publisher involved. Speaking of 3, Exploitation of the songs. The co-composers agree that they will use their best efforts to exploit the songs and the masters to generate revenue in any and all media now known or hereafter devised, but any such exploitation shall be subject to all parties' approval except as set forth in paragraph 3C below. Okay, so this basically says that we're both going to do our best to find homes for our tracks. That's what that says. Now, 3B and 3C is when you start signing these over to other libraries. 3B, they may, by mutual consent, assign all or part of the right, title, and interest to the song and the masters to a third party, but neither shall enter into any agreement regarding the songs or the masters without the other party's express written consent, except as set forth in paragraph 3C. So this means that if you both agree on it, then you can give rights to the tracks. So if you are working with a co-writer and you want to submit those to a library, which all of mine have, then this paragraph, or section 3, paragraph B, will say that that makes that legally possible. And now your publisher's article here in 2D doesn't kick in. And then 3C. Each co-composer assigns to any or all other co-composers the limited right to assign publishing or grant a license for television or film use to a third party under the following specific circumstances only. In the event that one party cannot locate any of the other parties within the reasonable time frame required to issue said license, or 10 business days. In this event, the appropriate co-composer shall automatically be granted full power of attorney to grant such license or assign any rights as needed for the songs and the masters. In no event shall any co-composer enter into any contract which violates the terms of any other existing contracts relating to the songs or the masters. This says if you can't get a hold of your co-composer within 10 business days, so 2 weeks, then you, as one of the co-composers, can enter into a contract and have your songs published by another library or signed for them. You are granting power of attorney, but you have 2 weeks. You have to get in touch with them, and you have 2 weeks to do so. So if your co-composer goes AWOL, or perhaps they pass away or something like that, then you have some control. Your tracks aren't just kind of dead in the water. D, all co-composers agree their individual contribution to the songs is impossible to separate from the whole. Therefore, neither party may withdraw their contribution from the songs or relinquish any claims to the songs, nor request that the other party do so. You can't come up later and say, you know what, I want my drum parts back, or I want my lyrics back, and extract them. Once they're together, then they are together. Number 4, general provisions. If any party collects revenue related to the songs or the masters on behalf of the other party, that party hereby agrees to pay the other party within 30 days of the receipt of said revenue. If you get paid, you got 30 days to pay your co-writer. 4B. The parties hereby agree that this agreement contains the entire understanding between them related to the songs and the masters, that it shall supersede any other discussions hereto, and that it shall be legally binding. This says this document is the end, and this defines the relationship. And C, the parties hereby agree that any disputes arising from this agreement shall be settled in the jurisdiction of, and then the name of the jurisdiction. So for me, this wouldn't be Texas, this would be the state of Florida. And then assigned and accepted. Now, we talked earlier about the schedule, and what the schedule is a list of tracks given to a library or to a publisher that outlines what specific cues, tracks, songs this agreement applies to. Now, when I enter into just a blanket co-writing agreement, then there's no need to individually outline the tracks. So I just have in my schedule any and all songs that are created together, proven by work products such as emails, recordings, etc. So this says any tracks that I've worked on with this person that can be proven that I've worked with this person through correspondence, recordings, that it shall be automatically blanket covered in this schedule. Now, that was a lot. I know that was a lot, but it's really important that you understand just some of the basic terminology of these agreements, so that when you're bringing people on board with you, whether as a work for hire or a co-writer, that everybody understands where the legal boundaries are, and should, heaven forbid, something go sideways, that you have some legal footing to come out on top, and to resecure your rights, or take care of yourself and take care of your business. Now, I will have links to both of these agreements as Google Docs, so that you can use as a template, with the understanding, again, last disclaimer, that it's provided as a courtesy for demonstration purposes. It is not intended as legal advice, and myself, 52Qs or whatever, we're not liable for your usage of any of these templates, but I do think they are a good start. So now, with our head full of legalese, let's listen to a track called Sturm Und Drang. It's a rock collaboration with my really great friend, Donnie Wayne Smith, who you've heard about on the channel before. And we're going to take a listen to it and talk about it on the other side. That is Sturm Und Drang, featuring Donnie Wayne Smith. Sturm Und Drang, that's a German phrase based like shock and awe. That's kind of what it means. That's not what it directly translates to, but that's essentially what that means. One of the new things I tried with this track is Get Good Drums, GGD, recently came out with their new library called Classic Rock, which I am just really, really excited about. And I tried originally to use that by itself on the track, but I really didn't like it on its own much. It's got that kind of that Bonham-esque big drum sound. It looks like, this looks like a 26-inch and like a 16 and 18 and a big 14-inch. This even looks like a Ludwig kit. These look like Speed King pedals and all of that. So I really honestly wasn't super crazy about it by itself, especially since I love the aggressive kit by One Kit Wonder. GGD, there's One Kit Wonder. This sounds absolutely fantastic. This is a Pearl kit because those are Pearl pedals there. But I thought, what if I layered them together And so we went from this, and then the classic rock on top of it, and essentially thought of this other drum set layer more like a parallel compression layer, right? Where I'm running it alongside, kind of squashing it down, and kind of the dry snappiness that I didn't like on its own. Like if I just played it, it just doesn't hold up. But I was wanting to try something different from that. So you layer them together. So you get that dry snappiness, the presence of the classic rock kit, the meat of the aggressive kit together. And I am absolutely blown away with how good these sound together. There is a couple of spots where, like, because this has 3 toms and the aggressive kit only has 2 toms, but that's okay. It just kind of adds character, I believe. The cymbals are huge. There's also a cowbell and some stick clicks. And I had to do some mapping kind of shenanigans because their default mapping is I think I've said this before. I think it's set up for like electronic kits. I'm not really sure, but I think they sound absolutely together, or great together, and I could not be happier. All right, so the drum part hitting the bell and the hi-hat on the offbeats. And so this would be like the drummer hitting the bell and the hi-hat. This right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Start off with this major, this hook right out of the gate. One of the things I really like about Donnie's playing, he's not afraid of major chords. I mean, yes, everything's kind of power chord heavy, but he's not afraid of major chords either. Right? And so it was a real challenge with this section because we have this really active guitar part. Now, if I were writing just like a prog or a metal track, then I could do, I could really punch those guitar riffs with the drums and really lock them together. But I tried that with an earlier cue, and that got a slap back from the publisher. They did not like that. It was too far. It's too into prog, too into metal territory. So I learned my lesson, and I just keep a nice, very simple groove. This 4 on the floor groove, and the bass supports that. The bass is playing 8th notes. But I do go for much busier hi-hat work, and I'm on the hi-hat. And you can see this is split because I have the accented business up here. Actually, I think it's all hanging out on the one. I didn't split it like I did the ride cymbal. And when I'm programming these rock parts, I listen for syncopation and accents in the actual guitar parts to punch. Dum 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 bump. So I punch that. Then we brought in another layer, and Donnie had given me another guitar part. But I felt like it was a little much. So I just let the guitar part, the lead part, and let this part kind of take center stage, which is here at the beginning. But you don't really notice it here at the beginning. What you really hear is this lead line, which is chef's kiss, but this gets really overshadowed. And so during this middle section, which is essentially a return to the A section, I wanted to differentiate it a little bit. So I just let that rhythm part, that rhythm guitar part, speak for itself. All right, coming up into a breakdown. Bring a little bit of that lead. I'm still not 100% sold on that. And so Donnie gave me these really syncopated parts. So lots of toms, big heavy drum parts happening here. And this is where the classic rock really shined, because by itself, it's okay. But layering in the classic rock with it, yeah, the little kind of Rage Against the Machine kind of moment here, and he's layering. And to get us back into our A section, I crafted by grabbing some of the end pieces and the sustain chords. Instead of going straight back into the groove, I needed a little transitional piece, so I gave it a little floaty moment where it floats, blip blip, bloom bloom bloom, and now we're cooking back into like the beginning. And so that was done in editing. And because this is production music, I was able to take the drum part from the beginning and put it forward. Come up to the end. Here's a tag. Go to halftime. And with some cymbal rolls to kind of take us home from there. So yeah, doing an album of these. We're doing a total of 12 of these tracks, and we got 2 more left to do. That's why they keep showing up here on the live, or not on the live feed. Well, I am programming them during the live stream, but why they keep showing up here in my vlog check-in. So that is going to do it for me this week. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope all of the contract breakdown, I hope that was helpful for you. And I know it got really dense and legally there, but I think it's important. Like I said, it's important that we really understand kind of just some basics of contract work. I mentioned the live stream earlier. I wanted to give a really big, huge thanks to my Patreon patrons whose support with their actual real-life money helps keep this channel going. And so if that's something you are interested in, you can check out the Patreon link below. And patrons have access to my patron-only music production live stream. I live stream every single week for at least a couple of hours, sometimes twice a week. We're in the middle of writing an epic trailer queue, and we are going on our 3rd week of putting that queue together. So if that's something you're interested in, then you can check out the link below. And once again, if you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It really helps composers just like you find me. So thank you very much. I hope you had a great week 36, and I look forward to talking to you next week for week 37. Until next time, peace.